One of those creepy tales that sticks with me. It's about a family called the Bells who lived in Tennessee back in the early 1800s. So picture this, the Bell family just minding their own business on their farm. John Bell, the dad, was a well-liked guy. They had a quiet life, nothing too unusual, until one day in 1817. John's out in his cornfield just doing farm stuff when he spots this thing. And when I say thing, I mean something totally weird, like part dog, part rabbit. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but John swore he saw it. And then just like that, it vanished. He brushed it off at first, thinking, maybe I'm just seeing things. But oh no, that was just the beginning. A few days go by, and the family starts hearing these strange noises inside the house. At first, it's just little knocks, like someone's tapping on the walls. They check it out but find nothing. No big deal, right? But then the knocking gets louder, like someone's pounding from the inside. They're freaking out at this point, but the real nightmare begins when they start hearing voices. Yep, disembodied voices whispering at night when everything's quiet. And as if that wasn't bad enough, stuff in their house started moving on its own. Chairs dragging across the floor, doors slamming shut. The worst part though, their youngest daughter, Betsy, poor girl, she starts getting attacked. Like physically attacked. They'd find her covered in scratches and bruises, and she'd wake up screaming. The whole family was terrified. They didn't know what to do, so they called on neighbors and even some preachers for help. But no one could explain what was happening. It became clear that this wasn't some run-of-the-mill haunting. It was something way more powerful. Eventually, the spirit itself made contact. It spoke, out loud. Not just random sounds, actual words. And it wasn't shy either. It would mock them, especially John. It even started predicting things like events that would actually happen. Now, for some reason, this spirit, people started calling it the Bell, which really had it out for John. It hated him. It kept telling him he was going to die, and before long he got sick. Really sick. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong, but he was just wasting away. And all the while, the Bell which kept tormenting him. It was like it was feeding on his misery. Then in 1820, John Bell died. But it wasn't a peaceful death. They found him in bed, and next to him was this strange little vial of black liquid. Some people thought it was poison, but no one really knows what it was. And get this, when they asked the Bell which if it had killed John, it actually admitted it. Said something like, "I fixed his medicine." Can you imagine? After John died, the haunting mostly stopped. The attacks on Betsy, the noises, it all just faded away like the witch had finished what it came to do. But here's the thing. Before it left, the Bell witch made one last creepy promise. It said it would return in 7 years. And according to the Bell family, it did come back, though not as violently as before. Just some small disturbances here and there. The story of the Bell witch hasn't gone away. Even now, over 200 years later, people still talk about it. Was it a vengeful spirit? A curse? Something darker? No one really knows. But one thing's for sure. If you ever find yourself in Adams, Tennessee, you might want to keep an ear out. You never know if the Bell witch might still be lurking, waiting to make her presence known again. So, the story didn't exactly end when John Bell died. Even though the Bell witch seemed to have quieted down after that, people in the area still felt uneasy, like the witch wasn't truly gone. Over the years, strange things kept happening, not just to the Bell family but to others in the town too. You know how small towns are, stories spread. One person would hear knocking in the night, another would see something out of the corner of their eye, like a shadowy figure darting across the road. Some people claimed they could still hear the Bell witch's voice, especially near the old Bell farm. And every now and then, visitors would report feeling cold spots or hearing whispers in the woods around the property. You'd have to be pretty brave, or a little crazy, to visit that place at night. Then there's the story of Betsy Bell, the daughter who was tormented the most by the witch. After John's death, Betsy tried to move on with her life. She was engaged to a man named Joshua Gardner, but, and here's where it gets even weirder, the bell witch apparently didn't like that. The witch warned Betsy not to marry Joshua. It would whisper to her at night, telling her over and over again that the marriage would be cursed. Eventually, Betsy couldn't take it anymore and she broke off the engagement. After that, the witch left her alone, at least for the most part. But there's more to this story than just the Bell family. Some believe that the spirit wasn't targeting John or Betsy out of nowhere. Rumor has it that the witch was actually the ghost of a woman named Kate Batts. Kate was a neighbor of the Bells, and she and John had some bad blood between them. Some say John cheated her out of some land, or maybe there was an unpaid debt. After Kate died, people started to connect the dots, thinking that maybe it was her spirit, full of rage, that came back to haunt the Bells. In fact, the Bell witch was often called Kate by locals, like they fully believed it was her. But here's where things get even more bizarre. Years later, people claimed the witch wasn't done with just the Bell family. The witch supposedly told them that it would haunt their descendants, popping up every now and then to make its presence known. And believe it or not, some descendants of the Bell family swear they've experienced strange things, like doors opening on their own, objects moving without explanation, and that same eerie knocking sound that started it all. There's even a cave near the old Bell farm that's known as the Bell Witch Cave. People say that's where the spirit retreated after John Bell's death. It's become a bit of a legend in itself. Visitors who've dared to explore the cave often come out with stories of strange sounds, feelings of being watched, or even seeing shadows that seem to move on their own. Some locals won't go near it, especially after dark. And of course, the legend still draws ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts from all over. People want to see if they can catch a glimpse of the witch or hear those infamous whispers for themselves. A few even claim to have had encounters. Equipment failing mysteriously, recordings capturing strange voices, and those cold, creepy sensations that can't be explained. But one thing's for sure, the legend of the Bell Witch is still alive, even after all these years. Whether you believe in spirits or not, it's a story that just won't die. Some say it's all just folklore, a way for the town of Adams to cash in on its haunted past. Others? Well, they're convinced that the Bell Witch is real and that she's still out there, lurking in the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to strike again. And if you ever find yourself in Adams, Tennessee, you might just want to stay away from the Bell farm or that cave. You never know what might be waiting. Now, you'd think after all these years, the legend of the Bell Witch would start to fade, right? I mean, stories like this tend to lose steam over time. But here's the thing, this one didn't. In fact, the tales seem to grow, with more people claiming experiences with the Bell Witch long after the original events. Let me tell you about one particular incident that happened years later, sometime in the early 1900s. There was this man, a local schoolteacher named William Porter, who supposedly had his own terrifying run-in with the witch. Porter wasn't the superstitious type. He didn't believe in ghosts or spirits. But he sure changed his tune after one night at the Bell farm. The story goes that Porter was staying at the old Bell house when he was suddenly awakened in the middle of the night by something pulling the covers off his bed. Thinking it might be an intruder or some animal, he jumped up to confront whatever it was, only to find nothing there, just that same eerie silence that seemed to settle over the place at night. He decided to go back to sleep, brushing it off. But the next time he was yanked awake, it wasn't the covers being pulled. This time he felt an actual weight on his chest, pressing him down like someone was sitting on him. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. And then, in the pitch black of the room, he heard it, a voice. Cold, low, and unmistakably mocking. The witch was back, and this time it was making sure Porter knew it. Terrified, Porter struggled to free himself, but it wasn't until he recited a prayer aloud that the weight finally lifted. Shaken, he left the house the next morning, swearing he'd never go back. And to this day, his story remains one of the most famous accounts of the bell witch returning after John Bell's death. Some folks think the witch was just toying with him, letting him live to spread the word that it wasn't gone. Not really. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's just one more story, one more guy spooked in a creepy old house. But here's the thing, more and more reports started piling up over the years. One local farmer swore he saw the same strange creature that John Bell had seen decades earlier, a dog-rabbit hybrid, if you can imagine that. It appeared at the edge of his field one evening, just standing there watching him. When he blinked, it was gone. And let's not forget the Bell Witch Cave. Even today, people talk about strange occurrences around that cave. There are stories of people who've gone inside and come out shaken, claiming they heard footsteps behind them, only to turn around and find no one there. Some even say they've seen faces, pale, ghostly faces, peering out from the cave's dark interior. Visitors have tried to capture proof, setting up cameras and recording devices, but the equipment often malfunctions as if something or someone is messing with it. There was one particular group of ghost hunters who spent the night near the cave, hoping to document any paranormal activity. They had all the gadgets, EMF detectors, thermal cameras, the whole deal. And for most of the night, nothing happened. It was quiet, almost too quiet. But around 3 a.m., you know, the witching hour, they started hearing whispers. Faint, barely audible, but there. The whispers seemed to be coming from inside the cave. When they ventured closer, the equipment started going haywire. Batteries drained in seconds, lights flickered, and the temperature around them dropped sharply, even though it was the middle of summer. One of them, a skeptic, walked a little too close to the cave's entrance, and in an instant he felt a sharp tug on his shirt, as if someone, or something, was pulling him toward the darkness. He stumbled back, shaking, and they all packed up and left as quickly as they could. They didn't get any definitive proof, but they swore up and down that something was in that cave with them that night. But here's the wildest part. In recent years, the legend has taken on a new life. There's talk about the Bell Witch being more than just a ghost or a spirit. Some think it might be connected to something deeper, an ancient force tied to the land itself. Native American tribes in the area had legends of powerful spirits guarding certain places, and some believe the Bell Witch might be one of those spirits, awakened by something John Bell did, maybe disturbing a sacred site or breaking some ancient rule. And then there are those who claim that the Bell Witch isn't gone at all, that it's still watching, still waiting. There's this theory that the witch feeds on fear, and the more people talk about it, the more powerful it becomes. Like the legend itself gives it strength. Who knows? Maybe by telling this story right now, we're giving it just a little more power. So, next time you're in Tennessee, if you find yourself anywhere near Adams or that eerie Bell Witch Cave, you might want to tread lightly. Because even though the original Bell family is long gone, the witch, she just might be waiting for her next victim.